following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back, in case you're wondering, with George Case, and we are here this morning for a little Hot Stove League baseball, and I'm going to have George introduce the panel, and we're going to talk about our favorite baseball teams and interesting teams from our youth. Here we go. George Case, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm just fine, Ralph. Thank you. And our panel today will be Gabriel Schechter from Portland, Oregon. Gabe is a longtime baseball person with great knowledge. Alan Blumpkin from New York City and Pittsburgh area with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Ronnie Rabinovitz, and it's quite a and David Hubler and DC. So we have quite a panel, and our topic is going to be really hot stove baseball, and we're going to talk about our favorite teams. I'm going to let the other fellows talk a little bit because I think it's pretty well known what my favorite team's going to be, but I'll talk about that later. But, Gabe, if you'd like to start it off with your favorite team, feel free to jump in and go right ahead.
All right. My father was born in Cincinnati and attended the 1919 World Series. And so I've been a lifelong Reds fan, which some years feels like a congenital defect. But my coming-of-age year for baseball was 1961. I was 10 years old, and our Reds won the pennant. My father took me down. I grew up in northern New Jersey. My father took me down to Pennsylvania to Connie Mack Stadium for 2 doubleheaders with the Reds and Phillies, and we were there for 31 of the 36 innings, and we never saw the Phillies score a run in all that time. Can I tell a story now, or should I save it for later? One of my favorite Reds. All right, one of my favorite Reds was Jim O'Toole, left-handed pitcher, very solid pitcher, sort of an earlier version of like a John Matlack type, and when I worked at the Hall of Fame, I'm going to say 10 or 12 years ago, Jim O'Toole visited the Hall, and he brought his wife and 6 of their children, I think. They had 10 or 11 children. And they all piled into the library, and Jim O'Toole wondered if we had a particular photograph, which we did. It had been on exhibit as part of the Baseballs America traveling exhibit. And here's the photo. It's a wonderful photo of Roger Maris's 61st home run. A photo taken from the right field grandstand looking back to the plate and Maris. And we got the photo out, and O'Toole pointed and said, there we are. In the front row were Jim O'Toole and his wife and Joey J. and his wife, another Reds pitcher. The Reds had clinched the pennant a few days earlier. And they sent these 2 pitchers to New York to scout the Yankees. And so here's Jim O'Toole and his wife in this photo of Maris following through on his swing for number 61. Beautiful moment. What a thrill it was to share it with Jim O'Toole, who pitched a shutout in Connie Mack Stadium that I saw.
Oh, wow.
Gabe, that is quite a story. I think all of us know, basically the premise of the 61 Yankees and Maris and Mantle and all that kind of thing. But to have that experience you had and to have a photograph of those guys, the Reds, really scouting the pitchers, and that's what they used to do. They, used to send advanced scouts, somebody to follow a certain club to get a line on the bat, and that's what obviously that O'Toole and Mahoney were doing there, at Yankee Stadium. So that's a great story.
They may have figured out they'd have no chance, as it turned out.
That was a Frank Robinson, Beta Pinson team, too.
Sure was.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you the whole the lineup. Don Blasingame was the second baseman, and Eddie Casco, Gene Freeze. They had Gus Bell and Wally Post platooning in left field. Jim Brosnan, Gordy Coleman at first base, and Dick Gernert. They had Jim Brosnan and Bill Henry, a great 1-2 punch in the bullpen. That really was valuable for them that year. Yeah.
Jim Brosnan was a great baseball book writer. He wrote Pennant Race and The Long
Season.
And they were both terrific. And in The Long Season, I think it was about the St. Louis Cardinals.
He started the season with that. That's about 1959. He started the season
yeah.
and was traded to the Reds for Hal Jeffcoat.
Oh.
Yep.
And he was reunited with Fred Hutchinson after Mayo Smith got fired from the Reds in 1959.
And he escaped Solly Hemus, whom he did not like, manager in St. Louis.
Did not have very good things to say about Solly Hemus.
He did have good things to say about the pitching coach on St. Louis. He was an old friend of mine, Marv Grissom. Uncle Brian was a New York Giant pitcher. I think he came out west with them in '58, if I'm not mistaken. And he was a great guy. I met him on my Tops gig, and we remained lifetime friends. I would call him on Thanksgiving, and he was a terrific guy. So, rest in peace, Marv Griffin. Wow, baseball memories. David Hubler, haven't heard your voice this morning.
Well, I'll pick the same year, 1961, because that's one of the great Yankee years, and everything went very, very smoothly that year for the Yankees. Side note, I was up in New Haven at a preseason Giants football game. They played an exhibition game up there, and everybody, including myself, who was in the stands, was listening to the Yankee game to see if Maris would hit. I think that was the 60th home run to tie Babe Ruth, and virtually no one was paying attention to the football game. And I think, if I recall correctly, he did hit a home run that game. So it was sort of by proxy that I saw or heard of Maris's 60th home run tying Babe Ruth. But 61 was, I mean, by any standards, 61 ranks among the great baseball team years, and for the Yankees, like 39 and 27.
Yeah, as good a team as there ever was. And I'll tell you who wrote a great book about the 61 Yankees was Tony Kubek. I don't know if he wrote it or his name was just on it and somebody ghosted it for him. Al Blumkin can probably tell us that. But that was my favorite book on the 61 Yankees.
Could it have been Terry Pluto who worked with him on that?
No, maybe. I have it. I could look it up.
Okay.
Okay. Terry Pluto basically did books on Cleveland stuff. I just finished a book of his on this is written after last season, on the state of the new Cleveland Browns team, the expansion team, not the one that is in Baltimore now.
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned Terry Pluto, Alan and Gabe. I think Terry Pluto was a sports writer at one of the Cleveland newspapers. I happened to meet him because he told me he was covering the Indians in '46 when my dad was playing for Cleveland.
Yeah, he wrote the book called The Curse of Rocky Palavito.
That's a very good book.
He also wrote oral history of the ABA and oral history of the early NBA. And the one of the early history of the early NBA, he was able to get to almost everybody except for Bill Russell.
Yeah, those books were Long Balls and something else. Great coverage of the ABA, especially.
Yeah, Wild Ride. They called it something like the Wild Ride.
Right. Louis Dampier was covered.
Yeah, from Kentucky. Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorite names in baseball.
I was really surprised when they had the ABA collapsed and they brought 4 of the teams into the NBA. I was really surprised that the Kentucky Colonels weren't one of them.
Well, right, exactly. I don't know. Dampier came into the NBA.
No. He I don't think he ever played in the NBA.
Okay.
He came out of Kentucky after they lost to Texas Western in the 1966 NCAA final. So by the time those teams came into the NBA, it was 10 years later.
Right, and some guys came into the NBA and their team didn't. Guys like Jim Tormolin and Bridges came to St. Louis. I happen to be I was a Knick fan, but I love the St. Louis Hawks. And I had a camp counselor, a guy named Barney Cable from Bradley, who played on the Hawks.
Barney Cable?
Barney Cable.
Yeah, I know the name, yeah. I know the name. I think he played with the Pistons a little while.
He played with Syracuse, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah. No, Syracuse is now the Sixers. Yeah.
Yes.
They've been the Sixers for the last 54 years.
You're bringing back memories with that. When I was 7 or 8 years old, my father took me to the old Madison Square Garden for an NBA doubleheader.
Oh, I lived
what
there.
A concept, huh?
I lived there.
Yeah, we all lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Dolph Schayes in the opener, and the Knicks get decimated by Cousy and Russell in the nightcap. What a night.
The Knicks in those years usually did get decimated.
Yeah. Half the NBA was there that night.
Yeah,
there was the 7:30 and the 9:15 game. The
Knicks, they opened the new garden, and the Knicks became good, but they stopped that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Universally, if there's anything that really works well for a fan, they have a pact.
I used to sit in the mezzanine for $3 on Tuesday nights. Yeah.
All right, quickly, I want to get this back to Washington and 1961. It was Christmas time, holiday time. My family took a trip to Washington, D.C. Now, I guess it wasn't Christmas time. It must have been spring break because they were playing baseball. And George Case III had a dad who was a third base coach for that Washington team. And here's my memory to just tell you how great they were. We got into a cab going to the game, and I was asking the cab driver what he thought. I was like a 15-year-old kid, already into it beyond belief. And I was asking the cab driver what he thought of the Yankees coming in to play Washington. And his response was, they're like a machine, a well-oiled machine. And they were. From top to bottom, they had 4 catchers. They weren't all primarily catchers that year, but Blanchard, Howard, Skowron, I guess there was 3 catchers, all hit over 20 home runs.
Yeah, Yogi was there.
And Yogi, of course.
Yeah.
Who played mostly left field.
Left field, yeah. Because Elson Howard started basically. Yeah, Elson Howard started basically when it came there in 1955 playing left field, and Yogi was catching, and then as Yogi aged, Howard took over behind the plate, and Yogi went out to the outfield.
Yeah, well, I wanted to mention when you're talking about Elston Howard, I had, a couple of weeks ago or months ago, we had Al Downing on our podcast, and Al and Elston Howard formed the first African American battery for the Yankees in 1961.
Yeah,
and that just so happened to be when my dad was coaching third base for Washington, and Al from Trenton, New Jersey, makes his major league debut against the expansion Senators that day. So, I've seen a picture of my father and Al, and people were asking me, well, what's the common thread? I said, well, the common thread of those two guys was that they both were from Trenton, New Jersey. And Al told me later, he said, George, he said, I bought my first baseball glove from your dad's sporting goods store. So
wow,
these are things that go back a long way. And what Ralph was talking about, a well-oiled machine with the 61 Yankees, I can tell you that the Washington expansion Senators were not a well-oiled machine. That year, I think they finished 61 and 101. So I was last place, and my dad told me at the beginning of the season, he said, well, we don't have a lot of talent on the club, but it's really fun for Mickey and Sid Hudson, who's the pitching coach, and myself back together again with Washington. And they did the best they could with very limited talent. First 2 months of the season, they were playing 500 baseball. But then the veterans, basically it was a veteran ball club with a lot of aging guys, and they all got old in a hurry. And I think Washington lost like 40 games out of their last 60 games, which put them in the basement. So
yeah, I remember George. They had a 12-5 lead against the Red Sox in one game.
Right,
and
they did.
They had 8 runs in the bottom of the ninth, and beat them 13-12, and the bottom fell out after that.
They did. You're absolutely right. And my father and Sid and Mickey were talking about that. They said that they had to suffer in the dugout to watch that kind of a thing unravel, which was just terrible because they thought, well, here's a win for us at least, and they wind up losing the game, which was sort of indicative of that whole season because after that loss, they really went on a tailspin. So, that's my Washington story. And Alan, since you're on here, I'm sure you want to talk about the 60 season in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and the 53 season with the Yankees.
Right.
Basically, before that, I went to 4 doubleheaders during the summer of 1961 because I was in between my freshman and sophomore years at Pittsburgh. And in the 4 doubleheaders, I saw 4 of the 16 Yankee home losses that season. I did not see that as a home run. So I was a jinx. But when I was 10 years old, I became very into the Yankees in 1951. But I was 8 and 9 years old. 1953 was the first year that I followed it day in, day out. I was 10, and I went to my first game in September of 1953 against Detroit. This is so long ago that Ray Boone was playing for Detroit, and Matt hit a home run of Billy Heft that went into the center field bleachers. Anyway, the 53 team was the last year of the 5-year dynasty. I was in love with Rashy, Reynolds, Lopat, Yogi, Woodling, Bow, all that team. And it was a blend of veterans and young players. And this is the only year of the 5 that the Yankees won a pennant easily. They won by 8.5 games. They won 99 games, and they had 3 unplayed games because of rainouts. Then they go to the World Series, and they play the Dodgers, who had won 105 and set franchise records for practically everything. And the Yankees beat them in 6 games in the World Series. Billy Martin in the series went 12 for 24, and he basically was Babe Ruth in that series, and he drove in the winning run with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning of Game 6. In fact, Allie Reynolds in that last game, Allie Reynolds got a win, which gave him a win in all 5 years of in each of the 5 series. But that win was a vulture because he took away what started the game and went 8 innings, went out with a 3-1 lead. He brought in Reynolds. Reynolds gave, and I was going crazy because here it was. And then Reynolds gives up a 2-run home run to Carl Furillo in the top of the 9th, and he got the win. He got the vulture win. And my other one was the obviously 1960 Pirates. I was a freshman, and I started rooting for the Pirates in the mid-50s in the National League when they were terrible. So I started following them. I could listen to the games off WWII in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I decided to go to the University of Pittsburgh. I knew Forbes Field was 2 blocks. I knew Forbes Field was 2 blocks away from my school. Ralph, can you hear me?
We're having a little bit of technical problems with you, Al. Would you call in again? And I'm going to ask Ronnie Rabinovich.
All right, okay.
Hello.
Hello, Ronnie.
I'm here. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to pick the Dodgers. What are some of your memories? I think that we were so blessed in New York. We watched in '53 the best Dodger team of our era, and I mean, you couldn't pick the best Yankee team, but '53 was as good as it got. So what a World Series that was. But what are
my favorite was 1955.
Okay, I'm back.
Naturally, because that was the year that the Dodgers finally beat those damn Yankees.
Okay, 55.
And it was also very special because in September of that year, Jackie had hit a home run. We were at the game. It was my birthday. And as he was rounding third base, he waved to me like that one was for me. And
wow.
Then that day, after the game, we were waiting for him by the locker room, and he took me into the locker room. And, you know, I'd never been there before, and it was quite exciting because, first of all, because we kept reading that sign on the locker room door, the warning, trespassing, don't enter, you could go to jail and all this legal jargon. So Jackie comes and waves to me, come here. So he takes me by the hand and takes me into the locker room. And I said, oh, my God, I'm going to jail. And he laughed. He said, you're with me. You don't have to worry. So he took a brand-new ball out of a bag. He took me from locker to locker to locker. Every one of the Dodgers was sighting this ball, patting me on the back, shaking my hand. I was like numb. I mean, all my heroes, Gil Hodges, Carl Furillo, Don Newcomb, Duke
wow.
Stewart. I mean, it was Pee Wee Reese. It was Campy. All of them. Sandy Koufax was a rookie that year. And he was so busy getting autographs for me that he actually forgot to sign the ball himself. So that was fun. Then we took him to dinner. It was my birthday party, and he was at my birthday party singing happy birthday to me. It was probably the greatest birthday I ever had. And about 2-3 weeks later, they were the world champions of baseball, the Brooklyn Dodgers. So that was a great year for me.
And your life has gone downhill ever since, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Ronnie.
Yeah, I remember that day too because I was a big Yankee fan, and I came home. From school. I saw the last of the ninth, and I started screaming and pounding the sofa. No, this can't be happening.
Yeah, that was the only year I ever bet on the World Series on the Yankees. So I never bet after that because I was beating the champ.
No,
hey, Ronnie, do you ever remember? Wait a second. Hold on.
Wait.
Well, I wanted to ask Ronnie a question. Do you remember
go ahead.
Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese did a radio show in New York? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
What can you tell me anything about that show? I remember listening to it.
I never lived in New York, so I don't know. I never listened to the show myself. But I know that they did do a radio show together.
No, okay. I thought you might have heard it, too.
No, I never really did.
My media memories of those days was Happy Felton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah, that was called the Happy Felton's Knothole Gang.
Yeah.
Right.
And they
Knothole.
did it
There
from,
are a couple of those on YouTube.
yeah, they did it from Ebbets Field, I think,
Yeah.
before ball games, and they had various Dodger players, and they had a bunch of little league kids and stuff, and they would go through a few drills, but they would get on camera, and I mean that was a terrific thing. And Happy Felton,
There was a story that when Cal Abrams was there, he used to tell that some kid got picked to appear on the Knothole Gang, and Happy Felton would ask them after whatever the program who their favorite player was. So Abrams said he bribed the kid to say him. And he's writing and everything, because I think he was going to get $25 or whatever. He was mentioned. So finally, Happy Felton gets to the kid and says, "Who's your favorite player?" The kid says, "Carl Ferrillo."
Ronnie,
Yeah.
Richard and his twin brother Barry Zamoff, who does the Jackie Robinson
I know him
project.
very well,
Yeah, I know you do. They were on the Happy Felton's Knothole Gang.
Were you really?
Yeah, and in fact, when I was over at Richard's house one time, he showed me the original letter of invitation to appear on the Happy Felton's Knothole Gang. It had our old address in the Bronx there, and they gave. I was very jealous, even though I had no interest in the Dodgers, but I was very interested because you got some nice, you got gloves and a bat, and you got to talk to, and you got to field.
I think I did one too. Beautiful.
Yeah. Does anyone know about Happy Felton? I mean, how he got hooked up with the Dodgers? I believe he was a band leader. He had no ties as far as I know.
No, and he was a heavy set
right,
guy.
He was a big, heavy set guy.
Yeah.
Big guy,
With glasses, yeah. Okay, can I go into the 60 Pirates, please?
Sure.
Okay. As I was saying before, I had to hang and redial in. I decided to go to the University of Pittsburgh, and my father, who was not a fan at all. I got into it through the cards when I was younger. He wanted to see what it was like out there, so I made sure the weekend I picked was when the Pirates were out on the road, so I wouldn't be tempted to go to Forbes Field. So anyway, I got to Pittsburgh, and this is in the fall of 1960. So I noticed, Forbes Field was right there. I started going almost immediately, and I made most of my early friends from college were kids that I met in the left field bleachers there, which was, used to cost $1. So in 1960, they wound up winning the pennant, and the Yankees they played the Yankees in the World Series. So the three, a couple of the games, especially the last, I went to class during the three slaughters after those games got out of hand very early. The seventh game, my friend and I, a bunch of us are watching in the dorm. And when Hal Smith hit the home run in the bottom of the eighth, me and this other friend of mine who I still talk to quite a bit, we decided to go over to Forbes Field. I had a transistor radio. We're following the game. So we go over there and we see the left field bleachers are open. Nobody's guarding or anything. We snuck in. We're 17 years old. What do we know from that? So we snuck in there, squeezed down, in front of the front row people as well as we could. And the two of us saw the Mazeroski home run.
Wow.
And then I bought a program on the way out, which I still have.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that was it. But that team that year was unbelievable for all the one-run games and the bottom of the ninth games that they won. And I interviewed Dick Groh extensively in 1985 when he came in with the Pitt basketball team to do a game at St. John's. And I asked him about especially about what it meant to beat the Yankees. I asked him would it have meant as much if it was the Indians or White Sox or somebody else. He said no.
I can imagine.
And he was very, very forthright. The only other question, one of the questions I did ask him was, what do you think would have happened if Dick Stewart had been fielding at first base in the ninth inning instead of Rocky Nelson? You remember when Mantle drove back into first base?
Yeah.
So I asked him what he thought, what he would have thought if Dick Stewart had been playing first base at that time, and he said, "Let's not go there." But there was a great team that it's very, very exciting, and it was a one-year wonder because the next year, Vernon Law blew his arm out, and a couple of them got really fat and lazy. So it was a one-year wonder team, but it's a team that still lives in the memory of all Pittsburghers who've seen them play. And I just wanted to give that out to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Alan,
that
was a great story too. I was curious. Some people have said about Mazeroski. They said, well, one of the reasons he was selected to the Hall of Fame was because of that home run. Now,
no, because of the fielding.
What's your take? Yeah, what's your take?
His fielding, and it's funny because when I interviewed Grote, I asked him outside Clemente, who would you think from that team belonged in the Hall of Fame? And he said, Roy Face and Bill Mazeroski. And when I met Mazeroski at a card show about 6-7 months later, I talked to him a little bit because there were some really big Hall of Famers there, and nobody was there asking for Mazeroski's autograph except me. And so I asked him, and he said, I didn't hit enough. Yeah, they hit about 260. But my take is if they could put in, Mazeroski was the best fielding second baseman I think I've ever seen, and he did it every single year. And if you can put in the Ozzie Smiths and the Louis Aparicios of the world, who were not exactly offensive juggernauts, you can put in Mazeroski. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. More defensive players should be put in, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, somebody put up a thing about Hal Chase, who was a notorious crook, and I put down, I said the guy had Hall of Fame ability, but in no circumstances should he be considered a Hall of Fame because he was as crooked as it gets.
I was thinking of Jim Catt, who could be the best fielding pitcher of all time, and a pretty damn good.
I think he and Tommy John both belong.
Yeah. For that reason, if nothing else, someday we'll have we have an ongoing discussion about who's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, the results come out on the 22nd of the ones the current vote.
Yeah, we'll find.
And right now, it looks like Mariano Rivera, the late Roy Halladay, Edgar Martinez, and Mike Messina.
Well,
I have no problem with any of those.
How about Bonds and Clemens?
They're getting up. They may get enough next year to get in, believe it or not. They're hanging around around 72-73%. That's a big step up from where they were
Is
last
it righteous that they get in? Start with Ronnie Rabinovich.
Yeah. Gil Hodges. That's a travesty.
Okay. All right.
And Minnie Minoso.
Talking specifically about Bonds and Clemens. How about your opinion on that, David Hubler?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, they were on the field. They were terrific ball players, but what made them terrific ball players? Was it their ability to hit and to pitch, or was it the juice that they took before the game or whenever they took it? So I don't know. I as I said, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not in love with either of them in terms of fandom. But I think you're right. I think they are going to get in. It's a whole new era of sports writers too. So it's guys like Hal Bach that are no longer voting, and I think the guys today, even though we can remember both of those players, it's like it was yesterday, I think the new guys are more inclined to give them a break and give them the benefit of the doubt. So I think they'll eventually get in, whether or not I approve of it or not.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. I really think that certainly in 50 years from now and probably in the next 20 or 30, all of these steroids guys are going to be in. Sosa, Palmeiro, all those guys. And in 50 years, nobody will care. Just like we don't care whether 100 years ago Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker may have thrown a game or conspired to throw a game. After a certain amount of time, nobody cares. They'll be in. I think what's happened is that the generation of writers decided that, okay, maybe they'll be in someday, but not on my watch. I don't want to be party to it. And that's why they voted against these guys for so long. And, we're stuck in the time when we are born and when we live. And it would be nice to have lived our baseball fan careers without having to deal with this nonsense. But there it is. And a lot of writers have said, fine, let them be in 100 years from now, but not while I'm not going to be part of it.
Well, that brings us to Shoeless Joe Jackson. Renee James has been on the show a couple of times now. She's seeing a movie about the great who was caught up in the 1919 scandal with the Black Sox. And I picked up on what you said. Eventually, people will forget. They haven't forgotten Shoeless Joe, and he's still out. So I don't know. Will they forget the scandal eventually? I do know you mentioned Sosa, and I don't think Sosa belongs under any circumstances.
McGuire's numbers are not good enough, as far as I'm concerned.
McGuire's numbers aren't, and I don't think Sosa's are either. But certainly McGuire's numbers aren't good enough.
Yeah, and Palmeiro didn't even make the first cut the first year he was eligible. He didn't get 5%.
Yeah, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs.
Yeah, but he didn't even get 5%. So, he would have to get in through a veterans committee.
Yeah, he will. Eventually, I believe they all will. A-Rod, all of them will be in.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the numbers will triumph.
I think you're right on A-Rod and possibly Palmeiro, but you look at McGuire's overall baggage, and he had some really, really awful years.
I would never put McGuire in the Hall of Fame. I believe he's a one-dimensional player.
He actually was. You look at his numbers, and they're not Hall of Fame numbers outside the home.
I think he's a newer version of Harmon Killebrew, but he had one strong qualification, and if that's tainted, there's nothing left. There's no foundation for him. If his home runs are questioned.
The rationale that's being used now is that since they put Seelig, who, for all practical purposes, condoned this, that should be open to Clemens, and Bonds particularly would have been a Hall of Famer if he didn't juice.
Well, that's like saying that having elected. That's like saying that having a. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Clemens' last couple of years in Boston were very mediocre, and he was. It appeared that he was on the downgrade before he went to Toronto as a free agent and ran into Jose Canseco. But Bonds was putting up Hall of Fame numbers, and so the story is that when McGuire and Sosa in 1998 started putting up these, these numbers, that Bonds got jealous of all the publicity that they were getting. Bonds was really, let's put it this way: if he was a football player, he would have been a wide receiver. He was a prima donna, and not like very many people.
I thought he was terrific.
He was.
He should be in. I think he should be in.
Yeah, but his numbers are, after he started juicing, became unreal.
Yeah.
And most people still recognize Henry Aaron as the all-time home run champion.
Yeah, they do.
Hey, I've said this before. Both Bonds and Clemens were competing against other players, especially relief pitchers in Bonds' case, who were equally as juiced as Bonds.
That's not, nobody's ever, I know Peter Gollenbach said they all juice, but these guys are the only ones who were called before committees and, basically lied.
Well, yeah, true to that, they didn't get a very good
Palmero denied everything, and then he was caught when he went to Baltimore, and then they found him juicing.
Right. I think I've told this story before. Palmero and Will Clark were college teammates and really didn't like each other very much. And I happened to be listening to the radio the day that Palmero got busted, and Will Clark says, "You got caught, partner." That's what he screams into the. He was so happy that Palmero got caught. He says, "You got caught, partner." Yeah, juicing is a big part of it. Gollenbach seems to think that 80% of the players were using. A lot of guys had cover-up, masks, good chemists, good fortune not to be caught. I'm sure that there are guys in the Hall of Fame who...
Yeah, listen. The history of baseball is the history of cheating. And for me, there are three cheaters who bragged about it, who are in the Hall of Fame, that I would take out tomorrow. And that's Gaylord Perry, Don Sutton, and Whitey Ford. All bragged about prolonged and systematic cheating through their whole careers. Nobody minds them, but they are as much cheaters as anybody. That's my 2 cents worth.
You say that Ellie, who would doctor Ford's baseball, Ellie Howard would, he was a cheater too under those circumstances. But I remember when I was 10, 11 years old watching Ford pitch to Howard, and at the start of an inning, he'd throw a pitch over in the strike zone, and Howard wouldn't catch the ball. It would roll 3 or 4 feet away, and he'd reach out and grab it. And that's when he was putting the dirt, the mud on the ball that Ford would use. Ford had a fake wedding ring that he wore when he pitched. It was ridged with points that scuffed the ball.
What about all
a fake wedding ring?
Gabe, what about all the pitchers from the dead ball era who used all the shine ball and the emery ball and all those things?
Absolutely.
They were outlawed.
Sure.
Absolutely. Of course, they weren't outlawed when they used them.
Yeah, but
all kinds of pitchers since then have.
Ed Walsh, for one, was a big spitball pitcher.
Yeah.
They have these guys, and just because they outlaw it, it took away. I mean, they did it because they outlawed these pitchers because because of Babe Ruth, and they felt the only way they could save the sport after the Black Sox scandal was to bring in new baseballs at every opportunity and outlaw these pitchers.
Yeah, in the late 1950s there was in the late 50s there was a big movement to bring back the spitball, legalize it, and it was led by the commissioner, Ford Frick.
Yeah,
bring back the spitball.
An article in Sports Illustrated.
But you know why they said that? Because everybody was doing it.
Yeah, but Lou Burdett was another one they were constantly accusing of throwing spitters.
They used to show. I remember seeing some articles, Alan and Gabe. They used to show some articles. Pitchers used to load up, and that's what they called it. and a lot of them would look like they were wiping their brow, and actually they were spitting on the palm of their hand, and that was one of the ways that pitchers loaded up for years. So, what you guys are talking about, the steroids and the juicing, is one aspect of cheating. The spitballs, the emery balls, the shine balls, the cut baseballs, the dirt balls, all that kind of stuff. That's another aspect of cheating. But I agree, cheating has been going on forever in baseball. Throwing signs, doing all that kind of stuff,
Let me tell you a story. Sometime in the late 80s, I was at a spring training game in Phoenix, sitting behind the plate, and a few rows behind me was Don Sutton, and then over sitting on the next aisle, maybe 30 feet away, was Chub Feeney. And the two of them got in a loud discussion, went on for an inning, about Sutton scuffing the ball. And at one point, Sutton yelled over to Chub Feeney, "How many balls did the Cubs send you that one game?" And Feeney yelled back, 41. And they just laughed their asses off at that. 41 stuffed balls from one game they sent to the league president's office, and he didn't do a thing about it. It's just a big laugh.
Yeah. Look, when George Brett, hit the point tower home run, Lee McPhail, I think, was the president of the American League at that point. Said, they wouldn't, that they overturned the ruling to call Brett out because it violated, because of the spirit of it. The fact that the bat was over the limit as far as the point tower was concerned, they didn't care about. There's a lot. What about Norm Cash, who played 1961 and hit 361 with a cork bat?
Yep.
Yeah, and never hit.
He wrote an article in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
He did a how-to article, how to cork a bat in Sports Illustrated in the 70s.
Yeah. So that type of thing has been going on, as
forever.
Has been going on since the major since 1871 with the National Association. I mean, this is something that. They're always, and somebody wrote a book. I think a guy named Dan Gutman wrote a book that ain't cheating if you don't get caught.
Yep.
Willie Mays was reputed to use what he called red juice, which was kind of a mixture of speed, basically, and that went fine. It helped him get through hot summer. And
now energy drinks.
Yeah.
Energy drinks.
Yes, that's true. And the energy drinks border on, their ingredients border on cheating.
And they're doing greenies. God knows how far back.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Alan, the reference that I've always heard when I was a young man, my dad would talk about, and the ball players, we're talking about the cheating thing, but that's what they did. A lot of the ball players, they took greenies, and that's what they called them. Mm-hmm. And that just gave them an extra boost of energy and let them get through the rigors of a long season. They would take greenies, and they were handed out by the trainers and the equipment managers. That was part of the life. But they never considered that cheating as far as the cheating.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah,
with steroids.
Yeah,
but it was something that they many, not all, but many took.
Yeah,
and that's what it was called. It was called greenies.
Yeah, I think especially they used it to combat hangovers. In that sense, it wasn't so much a performance enhancing as it was performance enabling, just so you could get out there in the first place.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, Abe. Hangovers probably were quite a bit a part of baseball, because we talked last week, a lot of the ball games were day games and that kind of thing, and at night, if they were out running around for hours and having a good time, I'm sure that Mantle and Whitey and Martin had a few hangovers over the years.
Yeah, Whitey said he never drank the night before he was supposed to pitch. They were scheduled to pitch. He emphasized that quite a number of times.
But he made up for it the night after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
right.
story remember in 1963 when Mantle came off that broken foot 2 months later and he pinch hit in the game and hit a home run.
Yeah.
It was his first appearance in a couple of months.
Against Baltimore.
And the Yankee Stadium went absolutely nuts. And Mantle, the story went that Mantle said when he came back in the dugout, these fans will never know how hard that was because he was on a big hangover when he hit the thing.
Yeah.
Didn't expect to be called. Yeah.
Who's next? Who hasn't gotten their 2 cents in? Ronnie, anything you want to add?
Yes. No, I think that was the 55 Dodgers and the 88 Dodgers were quite a team.
Ronnie, as much as I hated the Dodgers as a kid, I'm in a couple of Brooklyn Dodger groups on Facebook. And, the further you get away from that, the more and more you appreciate what happened and who these guys were.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't look at that I'm a partisan Yankee fan and hate all the Dodgers I hated Nellie Fox, I hated the Braves for years because they beat the Yankees in '57. But I've gotten so far away from that that
we look back, we respect
it's ridiculous.
Players that we didn't like. I didn't like Hank Aaron because he always helped to beat the Dodgers.
Yeah, Stan Musial,
I love
right?
I love him. Stan Musial. Yeah.
Yeah,
I hate it.
Stan Musial would come into New York and he would kill both the Giants and Dodgers. But he was one of those guys, you didn't hate Stan Musial.
No.
You just took him.
I hated Nellie Fox with a passion. Look, he was so small and looked like he was 14 years old and didn't belong on a diamond, and he would kill the Yankees with that bottle bat. Yeah. But the more and more, further and further I got away from it, the more and the more I appreciated it, and I was very happy when they named him to the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Nellie Fox was also very instrumental in Joe Morgan's developing Joe Morgan's career. He was a coach at Houston, Houston team, and he just is credited by Morgan everywhere you go.
Yeah, I missed most of Eddie Stanky's career as a player, but I'm sure he was very, very, very annoying. You hated these guys, but they were on your team. You'd love them.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I didn't miss what you guys were talking about with Billy Martin's 53 World Series. There was a terrific picture put up on Facebook yesterday about the day after that catch. It shows Billy Martin emulating the catch.
The catch was in 52. Yeah.
52, right. And,
the catch was in 52. It was off Jackie Robinson, of all people.
Right, and they had Jackie standing over him as and posing. That was kind of cute. They both shared, Billy Martin, shared a business advisor, same guy. And they were kind of friends off the field, but Billy Martin was so competitive, and he took terrific pride in the idea that he outplayed Jackie in the World Series. He came up. He wasn't a great player, but he was one of those guys that came up big.
No, it was a lot like that. I looked at this years ago. Johnny Evers from Ticket to Evers to Chance. He was a 250, 260 hitter during the regular season most of the time, but once he got to the World Series, he would turn it up about 50 notches. Martin was like that.
Reputations are built on World Series performances, but got to mention Ted Williams, who did not do well at all.
You know what happened to him? Because they had clinched the pennant so early.
He was hurt.
And they played exhibition series to keep themselves in shape. And while the National League was going through a playoff between the Dodgers and the Cardinals, he got hit in the wrist. And his hand was no good for that series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had 200.
Yeah.
Didn't know
that was the only one he got into. It's like Cobb. Cobb never got into a series after 1909.
He he didn't
Yep.
use that as an excuse, Williams. I'd never heard that story that he had.
Oh, yeah, that's in most of the books that are written about him.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I didn't read that assignment. Read another assignment. Schechter.
There's a very interesting book that came out a couple of years ago called Facing Ted Williams. And it goes through every one of his home runs. And where they could, they interviewed the pitchers that gave it up.
Wow.
Okay. I wanted to tell you, Gabriel Schechter and I did a show yesterday on our boyhood passion, dice baseball. And that includes board games, changing board games. One of the most interesting, fun shows I've done. So if you guys want to listen to it, it'll be published sometime, either today or tomorrow. And I wanted to ask you guys, did you play dice baseball as kids or board games as kids? Start with you, David Hubler.
No. That's the answer. No.
Ending with you,
David
Hubler.
I didn't either.
Okay, George, did you guys, when you were growing up, did you play board games, and did you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I played all the time. I've mentioned before All-Star Baseball, Ethan Allen's All-Star Baseball. I have my dad's disc. I went to a antique show a couple of years ago. I found the actual game that I had as a kid.
Wow.
So we wore them out, and it was the greatest game that I ever played. I mean, I never played the Stratomatics or the current games, but All-Star Baseball back when I was a kid was spinners and
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
sure.
It was, yeah, we had leagues. I used to play, I think with my friends, we used to play like almost every day. I mean, we had leagues, we had kept records, stats, everything else. And and Ethan Allen, my dad knew Ethan Allen. He was a former ball player in Cincinnati and then was George Bush's baseball coach at Yale. And Ethan Allen made a fortune from Catico Ellis on that All-Star Baseball game. It was one of the greatest games I think ever developed as far as a board game when it comes to baseball.
There was one that had a mechanical bat too. I remember that you could use marbles. You pitch a marble.
Yeah, it
out
was almost
of
like a pinball machine or something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And there was a dartboard made up to configure a baseball field that I remember having, and you throw it and you get a double, depending on where it hit.
When I was going to camp, one of my early years there, one of the counselors taught us a game with a deck of cards. And one year we actually had a league, 4 of us, and we kept records. We, drafted players, just to have there's nothing to tie the cards into the abilities. The black aces were home runs and so on and so forth. And we actually had a 14 league in there one of the years I was there.
Great.
Ralph, I'm gonna have to go now because I'm going to meet you again on the half hour. So I'll say goodbye to everybody and speak to you next week. Bye.
Take care.
I'm going to say goodbye to
David.
Thank you.
Bye.
Got a basketball game, so I'm going to take off too. Thanks, guys.
Well,
the card I remember most in the Ethan Allen game was Jim Bunning because half of it was strikeout. Some of the pitchers they didn't even have the home run on the card because they never hit one.
Those discs they were very good because you would spin them, and if it was a Babe Ruth, it was a fat number 1.
Yeah.
My dad had virtually no right-handed power. I think he only had like 21 home runs in his career, and his number 1 was so narrow you couldn't hardly see it. So
that's how I first
did it. Yeah, it was really a well thought out game. They had all the doubles, singles, triples, home runs, strikeouts, all that kind of stuff.
That's how I first learned about Cecil Travis was getting a car, one of those discs of his, and I had never heard of him, and then I found out, and we made up a couple, with the All Stars. We made up with Jimmy Fox and a few of these other Hall of Famers who weren't in there.
Yeah, they really the discs were very accurate. They were really
Yep.
They were based on their, their production and their knowledge. So, when Ethan Allen developed it, I mean, he did a good job because, they changed it every year. There was a classic version which had the all-time greats like Ruth and Gehrig and
they had black, and around the cutout they had a deep black, because and the current players didn't.
Right. Yeah, they had a couple different versions. The one I had was from 46.
Yeah, some of them are, believe it or not, are available on eBay.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I remember I went to this antique show. I was so excited. I said, "Oh my God, there's the game I had." It was a blue box, blue cover, and opened it up inside. And there it is. It's in pristine condition. And I went through the disc before I bought it, and there's my dad's disc. I said, "Oh man, I got to buy this." So I was so happy to find it.
Wow,
that's great.
I wish there was a game of the best diamond cutters in the world where you'd spin the thing and my dad would have come up on that game.
You're talking about real diamonds, right, Ralph? Not baseball
I'm
diamonds.
talking about real diamonds. He was a diamond cutter and knew nothing about baseball.
Right, there you go.
But it would have been nice to have a game. But anyway, just let me give Gabriel the chance to give the website. You want to read about his stories about fantasy baseball, about dice baseball. Gabriel is
yes. It was a Sports Illustrated game from the 70s called Superstar Baseball. And I created my own set of cards, and four of us played leagues for many, many years and compiled our own lore and history and a bonding friendship based on playing this game. The website is charlesapril.com, Charles like Comiskey, April the month.com. On the archives, go to April of 2014, and you'll see the 4-part history of Rust Ball, and it's good stuff.
It really is. His writings remind me of the Universal Baseball guy named.
Oh yeah.
Seen that right?
Robert Coover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a great novel that is.
It is indeed, and your writing is incredible.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, I want you recommend it to everybody out there to get into that, because as kids we spent a lot of winter time fantasizing over these games, and it just so happens that the game I loved the most from the 80s was that same game, Superstar Baseball, and where it picked up where All-Star Baseball left off is that it would rate pitchers as well. And also, if you remember, All-Star Baseball was just the hitter. It was kind of a one-spin thing. Well, Superstar Baseball brings into it the play of the pitchers matchup, and we both, Gabriel and I, enjoyed that game for years. Great hot stove fodder, just game. Good show, guys. Enjoyed it very much.
It was fun.
Okay, Ralph, I won't be available tonight or next week because of the football games.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe we'll hear you Tuesday. And,
I'll be Tuesday. And this show, the Tuesday night shows are my favorites.
Okay.
They're really enjoyable. Yeah.
I want George to close it out and say a few words.
Well, I just wanted to say how enjoyable it is for me. I learned a lot about your guys' preferences with baseball, and as fans, you certainly have wonderful memories. My memories are as the son of a ball player, so I have a little different perspective. But to learn about baseball and to study it and have fun. I mean, that's what a Hot Stove League is all about, and I think it's been a very nice podcast today. Gabe and Alan and Ronnie and David all contributed, and Ralph, your thoughts and memories. So, I will just close and say, talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so long.
Thank you.
Guys. Thanks for listening, everybody. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.